So you want to build your own cabin either for yourself or to rent on Airbnb for an additional stream of income, which will help you create a lot more flexibility in your life. But you probably don't have a lot of building experience, which makes you feel very overwhelmed just thinking about all the steps it would take to build a cabin. Well, you're in luck. I am the DIY cabin guy, structural engineer by day, and cabin builder in the making on the weekends. I'm doing everything I can to produce the most detailed step-by-step cabin building videos on YouTube to make it easy for you to understand what it takes so that you can confidently start planning for your cabin and building it successfully. After the mess it had been on the other side, if you've watched the previous episode, the second side went so much better. Everything fit exactly as expected, so it was really pleasant to make some progress. So now was the time to install the fascia board, which will help framing the roof overhang. To make my life easier, I added some plates to help me with holding the board in place. So these were actually leftover Simpson plates which were just laying around, and I did put one on each side. So for the fascia board, I was just using a 2x6 and I cut the same face angle cut as I did on the rafters, which can simply be done using a carpenter square as you're seeing right there. So now was the time to install the board. Working on top of the wall was definitely difficult as I was simply walking along the top plate of the wall. Having someone to help is definitely a plus in this situation, and once we had the board set on the metal plates I added, I just ran a few screws to hold the board in place, and that was it. The next step was just to nail it in place. I think I used 3 nails at each location, but once again, the most challenging thing is to work up the wall and holding a heavy nail gun the whole time. After that, I was finally ready to remove the steel plates and move it to pretty much the next location so that I could install the next board on the other side. Since I didn't want it to measure everything perfectly, I decided that I would just let it stick out and come back with the Sawzall and just cut whatever was sticking out, and that worked perfectly. So after that, we did exactly the same thing on the other side, which was another level more difficult because that was the high side of the cabin, but it was pretty much the same logic. And then I was ready to move on to other things that needed to be done before installing the roof sheathing. So if you remember the cabin plans, there is actually a 5-foot deck which will be covered by a roof at the front of the cabin. So whatever is sticking out of the LVL girder could not stay. So that's why I struggled for so long, as you can see here, trying to completely cut it off because the goal is that I will still have another piece of roof to build, which will be 5 foot long, and I will be framing it with 2x8 instead of an LVL because I don't need a big LVL, but I needed that LVL to go away because the idea is that I will do some sort of notched connection so that the new beam can just overlap the LVL beam. Voilà. So that's what I was just mentioning. I'm measuring here and getting ready to cut that notch. Honestly, it's not that important right now. I think once I frame that front roof, it will make a lot more sense. But for now, I just wanted to show it to you. I don't have the best angles, but anyway, I just removed those plates so that I could access it. I did the notch and then put it back on. The last thing to do at this point was that I wanted to add an additional rafter completely on top of the front wall so that I would have something that I could use to nail my sheathing. So it's not really a structural rafter at this point because it's sitting on the wall, but it will give me something to nail my sheathing. So all I did, and again, I know the angle is terrible, but I was just nailing it to the sheathing, and I also nailed it directly to the top plate, and then I ended up going back on the roof so that I could cut the sheathing flush with it and make it all nice and pretty, I guess. So I know that this episode and the last one were much shorter in time, about 5 minutes, and that's because actually I've been on vacation. I mean, I guess if you can call it that. My father is actually visiting from France, and we've been busy working on other projects such as building a brand new fence for my house, as you can see here, as well as also painting my rear deck, and all sorts of like small projects. So of course, we've also been working on the cabin. That's why we'll go back to a longer episode as we're ready to start sheathing the roof. And yes, it's finally happening. I'm so close to having a cabin that will stay dry. I cannot tell you how excited I am about that. I have been so tired of all the rains I've had in this cabin and how many times I've been there just pushing the rain around with a broom. I'm just over it. We will also talk about safety working on top of a roof because that's pretty important, as well as a lot of other things. So definitely check it out on the link here. And thanks again for everyone following the channel and my videos. It means a lot to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you in the next one.